Hey, we're checking out Jeff McNeill photography here because one of my students would like to learn to do this sort of photography, and Jeff McNeill is an inspiration for him. And what I'm going to do is walk through many of Jeff's photos. We're going to look at his portfolio here on his website. And I'm going to share with you the elements, the things that I'm seeing in his photographs that makes them strong. So the big idea here is to learn to understand what photographs are made of. As photographers, we're really all working with the same stuff. We've kind of got the same raw materials that we're working with. And of course, we'll use them in different ways. But when you get familiar with, well, what are the ingredients of a photograph? What are photographs made of? Once you get familiar with that, well, then you'll know exactly what you've got to work with. And of course, even if we're looking at Jeff's photographs here and we're appreciating them and we're trying to figure out how did he do it, each person is going to come up with their own unique way. This isn't about copying somebody else. This is just trying to appreciate, I suppose you could say something like the craftsmanship of Jeff's photography, and then saying, okay, now how do we go out and do this kind of thing? But of course, how do we make it our own? How do we put our own unique look on it? And one thing I want to do is appreciate what I think is unique about Jeff's photographs and why I think somebody might be drawn to them. So when you find a collection of photos you like, whether it's somebody's portfolio, it's Instagram, it's a magazine you see in the store, when you find photographs you love, you should just spend some time enjoying them. Just love them. And you probably already do that. I love to pick up old copies of Life magazine and flip through them. And I just love the photography usually. But at some point, I go from, okay, I love these photos to, okay, now let's appreciate how they were made. Let's kind of reverse engineer them and figure out, what was going on that makes these photographs so special. So the first, I'm going to walk you through a few things. We're going to look at the time of day in these photographs and how the light is affecting things. We're going to look at some basic composition, lens choice, shutter speed, and even the use of color in these photos. So let's start with the time of day, because there's definitely, a beautiful aesthetic to these photographs. And I noticed that there seem to be two or three main times of day in the photographs. One of them is golden hour. And we can see a good example of that we'll see it in a few photos, but we can see it right up here. And zoom in a little bit here. Oops, that's weird. It's not letting me zoom. It let me zoom a few minutes ago. Okay, well, anyways, this photo that I'm on here, this is golden hour. Golden hour is basically, it's the first hour of sunlight in the morning, roughly speaking, or the last hour of sunlight at the end of the day. And what's classic about golden hour is that the sun is very low in the sky. It's very warm. The light is not nearly as harsh and intense as it is, say, at noon or late morning or early afternoon. And so you get that nice warm glow and much softer light. So that provides a beautiful aesthetic in many of his photos. We can see that kind of thing going on over here. And you'll notice it in several of his photographs. But I also notice that he loves to use blue hour. So let's find a good example here. Once I point it out, you'll see it all over the photographs. So essentially, blue hour is the sun has set. Blue hour kicks in kind of just a few minutes after sunset, and it's when the sky has not turned totally dark yet. It's not totally black. And there's a blue hue in the sky. So you can see it in this photograph right here. You'll notice the sky is dark, but it's not pitch black out. There's still some light in the sky. But what's great about this is that here he gets the light on this barbecue outdoor kitchen area. He gets the The pot lights that are up here, he gets the glow from those, but he also gets a little bit of glow in the sky, and the sky is still kind of lighting up the scene a little bit. So instead of like a pitch black scene with some harsh pot lights there, we get more of a balance between the very dim bit of light that's still left in the sky and then the lights kicking in. Notice this photo over here is a little bit more extreme. The sky is a lot darker. You can still see the blue in the sky. You can see why they call it blue hour, but it's a lot darker. And so you got a much higher contrast scene here. The sky is darker and the lights stand out a little bit more. Blue hour is definitely fun to play with. You can see it here in this pool photo as well. You get that interplay between the little bit of light that's still left in the sky and the light in the scene. We've got it down here, so we got it all over. So obviously he loves golden hour and he loves blue hour. And there are a few shots here that look like they were taken during the day, but nothing is in really harsh light. We're not seeing harsh, dark shadows and bright, harsh highlights, right? The lighting tone here is a lot less extreme than it could be, and I think it's great for his photographs. It makes everything look beautiful. The last thing that you want to do if you're inspired by this kind of photography is go out and shoot similar types of scenes at noon or something like that. Like that's just, it's not typically the beautiful time of day. Now, you could work with it and you could become a person who does a really amazing job shooting things in harsh light. But if you're going for something like Jeff has done here, you definitely want to be out during golden hour or blue hour, or perhaps even on overcast days. All right, let's move on. Let's think about some of his compositions. So I noticed some of these photographs have great symmetry in them. And let me find an example here of symmetry. Okay, this is, okay, here we go. Here's one classic photo I was looking for. So with symmetrical photos, you can divide them right down the center, and it's basically the same, you get the same kind of look on both sides. So we can split the pool house right down the center. We can split the pool down the center. Typically, with symmetrical photos, you're looking for geometrical shapes, with straight edges on them. So you're looking for squares, rectangles, I mean, even octagons. It doesn't really matter. As long as you can cut it down, cut it in half, and it's the same on both sides. Now, the rest of the landscape, the gardens and the trees are not identical on the left and right side of the photo, but he's working with the symmetry of the pool. So you'll notice symmetry in a number of his photographs. And if we move on, the other thing you'll notice is that, oh, here's a good example of symmetry right there. Then the question is, okay, what sort of perspective does he bring to the scene? In many of the photographs, oh, good use of symmetry over here as well. In many of the photographs, it's kind of a face-to-face. We're just looking right flat at the front, at basically the front, the face of the house, or we're looking at the face of the pool house. Again, looking at the face of the house here. But then you'll notice in many of his other photos, it's kind of like we're standing at one of the corners. So look at this pool, for example. We're standing on one of the edges of the pool, looking straight across. And then in this photograph down here, we're standing at one of the corners of the pool, and we're looking across to the other corner. So most of his photos you'll see are either face-to-face, or he's standing at one of the corners looking into the scene. Occasionally, there are interesting lines, like the driveway in this photograph. We've got the line going across the edge of the pool. There was another one here where I think I saw kind of a winding sidewalk path there. So another path there. So he's either looking straight at the face of the object, or he's looking from one corner to the other. He's got some interesting paths winding through some of his photographs. So just think about those elements when it comes to composition. Next, I think in most of these photos, he's using a wider angle lens. And the wider angle allows him to get into some pretty tough spaces. like this, like some of these smaller patios. I mean, it may be a large patio, um, but it's but it's small relative to photographing, you know, a 40-acre farmer's field or something like that. And so he's in these relatively small spaces, but he's got to get a lot in the shot. Like look at what he's got to do here. He's got to get the house, the pool, the patio, and the furniture all in the shot. And I guarantee you he's using a wide angle lens to accomplish this. This might be something around 14 millimeters or 10 millimeters, something like that. But he's got a lot to get in the shot, and using a wider angle in a tight space will allow you to do that. One of the dangers, though, is getting really weird, distorted perspectives, and that is barely perceptible in any of his photos. So you have to be careful when using a wide angle lens that you don't end up getting. It can make your scene look like you're looking through a circus mirror or something like that. If you've ever been like in one of those weird circus mirror mazes where you look in one mirror and it makes you look really short and stout, and another mirror distorts you and makes you look really tall and skinny, you can get really weird distortion with a wide angle lens. And obviously Jeff knows what he's doing. That distortion is barely perceptible in any of his photos. And the only people who would notice are other photographers who are nitpicking, basically. And he really uses his, it's not even wide angle. In most cases, it's probably an ultra wide angle lens, anywhere from wide angle to ultra wide angle. And he uses it very well. So practice with your ultra wide angle lens, and practice getting good clean shots without the distortion. Next, okay, so what have we covered? We covered the time of the day and the type of light that you're shooting in, whether it's nice, warm, golden hour light, whether it's cool, blue hour light. We've looked at some basic composition, lens choice. Let's look at shutter speed for a second, because in many of these photographs, we have fire, and you'll notice that many of the shots with the fire, it's got a very ephemeral kind of look to it. So as I zoom in here, notice the flames in the background. Notice how, kind of smooth and dreamy they look. They don't look like he's using a fast shutter speed and he's freezing the action, he's freezing the flames. What he's done is he's used a slow shutter speed so that he can actually capture the movement of the flames. But there's another thing that he's done, and I'm just looking, oh yeah, so here's a great example right here where we can see the way that he's used a slow shutter speed to capture those flames. You can see through them. They almost look like a holograph or something. And he's used a slow shutter speed, maybe 3-4 second shutter speed, something like that anyway, to be able to capture the glow, but he's also captured the movement. This is just like capturing the silky waterfall photos or the trailing headlights or taillights on vehicles that you often see in like a cityscape kind of shot. So he's got his camera on a tripod, and he's doing something like a 2 or 3 or 4 second exposure. Maybe it's more, something like that. And that way he's able to capture the flames. But also notice that in all of these photographs with the flames, he has not photographed them when it's pitch dark out. Most people are sitting around a fire when it's totally dark, but it's not really the best time to take pictures of flames. It's better to do it when there is still some light in the sky. So during blue hour or during golden hour, that way you can capture the flames, but then you're also still able to capture the details in the rest of the photo. You can actually still see the plants or the pools or whatever. It's not pitch black where all you can actually see is the flames. These are the kinds of things that take your photographs to the next level. There is a reason why Jeff McNeill is a sought-after photographer, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say probably an award-winning photographer. He doesn't brag or show off or anything on his website. He just shows you his pictures, and there's a reason that they're so great. He really uses the various elements and thinks about what's the best time of day, what's the best kind of light, and he really nails it. So the last thing that we're going to notice, we're going to look at kind of the color palette in his photographs. And so there's a lot of, first of all, it's very clean, right? You don't see like a lot of messy colors. What we're seeing in his photographs are mostly neutral tones, white, gray, brown, and then we're seeing the greens, of course, and that makes up the bulk of many of the images. But then in some of the images, we're seeing the neutral tones and the greens and blues. They work really well together. And then in some of the photos, we're seeing a play between warm and cool tones. So for example, here's a photograph where we have got neutral tones. We've got a lot of grays. Then we got the blues. And then we've got the warm sunlight coming in. And that warm, cool contrast is really great for photographs. So the color palette, and again, we've got warm, cool here. We've got the warm lights coming on the house. It's being taken at blue hour, so there's blue in the sky. And then we've got the neutral tones and the greens. We're not distracted by busy color palettes in these photos. And the beauty from the color usually comes from the contrast between warm and cool, or the warms and the greens and the neutral tones. So think about your color palette in your photographs. You can be totally inspired by Jeff's photographs here. You can be inspired by his use of the time of day. You can be inspired by his clean wide angle shots, his interesting compositions, the color palettes, and yet you might do something completely different. I'm a family photographer, and I think if you were to look at the portfolio on my website, you would see some subtle similarities. You would see that I love to use golden hour. I don't generally do photographs at blue hour, but if you were to look at some of the photographs from my photo walks, you would see that I love to go out at blue hour, that I love to go out at golden hour. You would see that I don't think you would see the same sorts of compositions, but that's because I have different subject matter, generally speaking. You would definitely see busier color palettes and not nearly as unified as Jeff's are here, and that's okay. But you would definitely see, I think, why I would be drawn to Jeff's photographs. So anytime you find a collection of photos, appreciate it, love it, spend some time with it, and then break it down and try to figure out what the photograph is made of. What kind of light, what time of day, what were the composition strategies, what were the lens choices, special camera settings like a slow shutter speed or a shallow depth of field. What are the color palettes like? Learn to see what the photographs you love are made of, and then pay attention to yours. Go back to your photographs and say, what are my photographs made of? Was I intentional about what ended up in this photo? Was I intentional about the time of day, the color palette, stuff like that? Was I intentional about the use of light, the lens choices, or was it kind of haphazard? Even if you get an amazing shot that you love, that doesn't necessarily mean that you thought it through. And the more you can see what photographs are made of, what the photographs you love are made of, the more you will think about your own photographs, and it will help you to be a little more strategic and a little more intentional when you go out to make your own photos.